tuning in this week. And once again, my apologies for not being able to post for a significantly longer period of time this time. Just been busy. I got my multi-engine rating, so I'm super excited about that. Be on the lookout for more instrument and VFR videos. Today is a VFR specific video, which I'm very excited to share with you. Also, I am hoping to do a video, something about like just general systems, not really to a specific make and model of aircraft, but I wanted to just kind of do an intro to systems. So let me know if that's something that you want to see. So today's video is going to be about cross-country flight planning, and again, I want to put a disclaimer on this that it is an intro. We're only covering like probably 10% of the full 100%, because cross-country flight planning is a long lesson and it's going to be divided into multiple parts, probably over the course of the next couple of months. So first things first, now the way that I teach this, I want to kind of preface this because it's important. So the way that I teach this is basically the map comes first, the numbers come second, the flying comes third. Okay, so we're going to first start with the map portion today. So now with that, it's important to also preface that we're not going to be looking at weather today. We are going to be looking at specific symbols, and I'm going to be pointing out things that I look for, and airspace, and a bunch of other things. So, first things first, we need to pick a departure airport. So, I picked, we're going to go from Flagler Executive to Daytona Beach. Okay. Now I know they don't call this Daytona Beach. I think it's, yeah, Daytona Beach International. Interesting. Dab. So we're going to start here, and I'm just going to click the plan button. I'm on SkyVector for reference. Let me see if I can move this. Oh, sweet. Perfect. So now I'm going to right click on my Daytona. So it's about 19 nautical miles, so not really across country, but just for reference, we actually, let's start here. There we go. I didn't plan that wrong. I'm not familiar with this area, and that is exactly why I did that. Maybe? There we go. So it's 49 nautical miles, which is okay. I might move this down here. There we go. Okay. Now we've got a cross country. I did not plan that very well. My apologies. Anyways, so I'm going to click on this. No. Alright, so there are 4 things that I look for on my map. Okay, that are not really airport specific. Traffic is the first one. Okay, so I like to predict, where could traffic potentially come from. Okay, so now we're VFR pilots. We are using our eyes to see. We're not using our instruments to see. But I want to bring this to your attention right here. We've got some airways coming through here. Okay. Now, airways are very important for instrument traffic. So if we interfere with the airways at all, it could potentially pose a threat. However, we'll just keep that in mind for now. So next, I'm also not just looking at aircraft traffic. I'm also looking at area traffic, okay? So one of the first things that I notice up here is the airport that we're coming from has a seaplane base. So a seaplane base basically is what it sounds like. It's an airport on the sea, a river, a lake. So we can expect some crossing seaplane traffic. So we have our normal non-floated aircraft, and we have our floated aircraft. So that's something to watch out for. Now, another problem that we have with traffic, again, down here, seaplane base. Another issue with traffic is this Charlie. So, if you remember from one of the first videos I did on the sectional chart, we talked about how a Charlie is in between a Delta and a Bravo. So, Bravo is the busiest, Charlie is the next busiest, and then Delta. So, we're coming from two relatively busy airports, okay? Now, I wanted to mention that this Charlie, there's something interesting about this Charlie, and I want to see if you can figure out what it is. And it's the main reason why I chose to fly over in this area. So see if you can figure out what that is, but we're going to get to that in a moment. So some other things to consider as we're going to Macy Ranch Air Park is gliders. I can see we have glider activity and parachute activity. So again, that's traffic. Now, the reason why traffic is so important is because pilots need to know what's going on in their area, right? I don't like to fly in an area that I'm not familiar with. But when I understand the traffic patterns and potential ways to go around something so dangerous, it helps a lot. Okay, so now let's see if we can notice anything else here. Boom. High volume of flight training, surface to 4,000 feet MSL. So that's what I kind of mentioned just a second ago, what I wanted you to figure out. Daytona is notorious for one of the world's most famous and popular flight schools, and that is Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. So this could potentially pose a threat to our operations, right? So traffic, that's really kind of like our strike one here. Now let's see if we can point out any other types of traffic that would be around here. And again, I don't just look through my flight path. I look probably like out here. Now, you can notice that we have the ADAs here, which we'll talk about more in a second. But that probably means that we have international aircraft coming in from overseas. So potentially military traffic, naval traffic, airliner traffic, training traffic. So definitely be aware of that. Let's see. So I'm also looking down here because in theory, we could also divert to an airport down here as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Now down here we have, Orlando International Airport. We have Orlando's Bravo. So, right, as we talked about, we have heavy traffic coming in and out of that Bravo. So that's definitely something to watch out for. Now, I know I've had students argue with me in the past that who cares if the Bravo is, south or north, east or west of where you're going, because, the chances of them actually being low enough to cause a collision over here is very slim. However, it's still very important to have an idea of where the traffic could be. Now, down here, this is also why I picked this area, Kennedy Space Center. So rocket traffic, we've got the Florida Launch and Landing Facility, probably some testing sites down here, Space Coast Regional, rockets again. So basically here, this is a very, very dangerous area to fly. Now, when we get an understanding, build a mental picture of the potential hazards, we can ensure that our cross country will run as smooth and as easy as it could possibly go. Now, next, so we talked about traffic, next is terrain. So I like to look at the terrain in the surrounding area, you know, are there mountains, are there hills, lakes, anything crazy like that. Now, terrain, I know a lot of people argue, hey, terrain is like mountains, terrain is hills. I also count the ocean as terrain, believe it or not, because there's a regulation out there that says if I go beyond power-off gliding distance over a body of water, I need flotation devices. So, we've got the ocean. That's our first means of terrain here. Now, because we're pretty much at sea level here, the terrain isn't going to be too bad. However, we still have hills that we have to clear over here. So, like, we've got 437, 460. That's the highest I've seen so far. So basically, now again, we're probably going to depart from here and then shoot down. So we'll definitely, probably most likely be higher than these little hills, which is nice because here in Utah, where I'm from, our terrain is like 10,000 feet, 11,000 feet. So all I'm seeing is like pretty low mountains and stuff, but I don't see any obstructions besides probably this one at 1549 feet. Let's see. But at this point, I'm also looking at my field elevation. Like, okay, this is pretty low, right? So I'm also... Why did it just do that? Yeah, this is pretty low. Like, this is pretty much sea level. And then I scroll up to here, and I do the same thing here. Yeah, I mean, they're both pretty much sea level. So we're going to get better performance there. So we can go, okay, we're probably going to get better performance, so I'm going to be able to clear that 460 feet fairly easily, which is nice. And this is kind of the part where I guesstimate performance. Like, okay, obviously we're at sea level versus 6,000 feet where I'm at right now. We're like 5622, but 6,000 feet, sure. So I can rule that my plane is going to get a lot better performance, right? Because we're at sea level over in Florida here. Alright, so traffic and terrain. I don't really see very much threat. We do have a big lake down here. So if we fly over that, we're probably going to need flotation. Same thing with this, depending upon like how we cross it or if we touch it. But my biggest concern here is the ocean. And again, that is because of not only the power off gliding distance problem, but spatial disorientation problem. Now, I'm a pilot that's never flown over the ocean myself. You know, I've taken commercial airline flights over the ocean to Hawaii, but I've never actually necessarily like got on a solo flight. I did do I wasn't the pilot, but I was able to do like a fun little air tour in Hawaii, and I can tell you the ocean is disturbing because so much spatial disorientation that can happen. So that's another concern. So moving on, we got traffic, terrain, clouds. Now this is where I do check my weather. Now I did mention earlier that we are not going to check the weather, but I have decided to I've decided that we are going to check the weather here. So this is where I check the weather and make sure to say, hey, okay, I'm clear of clouds, I'm clear of this, right? Now, let me see if I can put in a flight plan. So I have to get the codes. I don't have them memorized. KSJC to this guy down at the bottom. X50 path. Oh no. Oh my goodness, that's so funny. I typed in the wrong one, of course. What is this? SGC. That is probably the funniest thing I've done in a long time. Now where's my path? Why is it not working? SGC? SGJ. Oh my goodness. I am struggling. My biggest apologies here. Okay. So here's our path. I don't know why it's not pulling up the METARs. So I'm gonna have to probably go to this. SJC, right? So sky's clear, that looks awesome. And I'm gonna go off of this one. I don't know why it's not pulling up TAF for that one, but I mean, view 25,000, view 25,000, view 25,000, sky's clear. So pretty much like no matter what time we leave today, we will be, well, clear of clouds, it looks like. Let me see if there's anything in the middle here. But I pretty much check all of the TAFs and hit the clouds, right? So, and I scroll through like this. So it looks like pretty much through and through the skies are clear. Now, ceiling invis, I love this chart if it pulls up anything, but it looks like pretty much everything is clear on our flight plan here. And even if I scroll out, it looks beautiful. Precip, any amounts of precip? Nope. So that's nice. I know that I'm going to remain clear of clouds, clear of precip, which is great in this case. Temp. Now I do like, I don't like to do the surface, but, you know, I'll go 9,000. So temperatures are, I have to pull up a legend for this one because I can never, you know, remember. So it's kind of warm. Yeah. It's warm, but that's okay. Like, my performance is still going to be better because we're at sea level, things like that. Now, winds, this is where I get my winds. I love this chart so much. So, I have it set to 9,000 feet. I know we're not going to cruise that high, but still. And as I decrease to 6,000, I can see the shift of winds. Like, look at that. The direction. The directional shift. Isn't that crazy? So if we cruise at 3,000 feet, yeah, like 6 knots. 6 knots, definitely not that bad. Turbulence. Again, 3,000 feet. I have to pull up the legend. I can, you know, it's kind of hard to match the colors. So pretty much like light-ish turbulence. So nothing to be concerned about here. Yeah, lightish turbulence. Honestly, there's probably not really any, which is always nice. And icing is my biggest concern when I go on flight plans here in Utah, just because that gets so dangerous so fast. And I can see there's no ice. Like, it's too warm. Prognostics. Now, again, this is like the very, very quick version of what I do. I never actually do it this quick. I will make a second video where I do only a weather briefing. Like, it's going to be only a weather briefing. We go through every single product in the aviation weather database here. Well, nearly every chart. If I was to hit every chart, that would be forever. But I'll give you like a pre-flight weather briefing, and then the one after that is going to be calculating performance and starting on the numbers. So anyways, we've got a high pressure over here, a little bit of a trough. Ooh, a dry line. Interesting. Yeah, so nothing to worry about in our flight plan area here, which is pretty dang nice. Yeah, so traffic terrain, clouds will remain clear of clouds, clear of weather, turbulence, icing, things like that. And lastly, airspace. So airspace, it looks like I'm going to be departing out of a delta, and that delta turns to an echo on the outskirts of that area here. So, and that is just because this airport has instrument approaches, and the instrument traffic needs to have echo airspace to control them in and out of the field. So that's why it's echo, kind of like this. Now, furthermore, out on the outskirts of here, even further, we have echo that starts at 400 feet instead of the standard 1200 feet out here. So I can expect to take off and climb inside of the delta, and then probably get cleared southeastbound towards my destination airport. Now, outside of here, I'm still going to be in the echo because I'm not going to be below 700 feet, unless if it's for some weird reason, but I doubt that would be a problem here. Now, out here we have Golf at the surface, echo starting at 1200, right? So I just walk myself through, okay, this is the type of airspace I can expect. This is what I can expect with the airspace. So remember, prior to taxiing in a delta, you have to call up ground control and get clearance to taxi to a specific runway. Now, a lot of new students skip this step, and this is very, very important. So, make sure that you call up ground, get your taxi clearance, call up tower, get your tower clearance to take off. Now, coming down south here, I have a alert area. So an alert area, I know I can fly through it without prior permission or anything like that. I just have to be very, very careful of the high volume of flight training surface to 4,000 feet MSL. Now, me as a pilot, I am very familiar with these high volume of flight training. Be very careful because I am from a flight school that has tons of aircraft, tons of helicopters, and we also have neighboring flight schools that come and use our practice areas as well on occasion. So that's something to be very, very aware of. Now, also over here we have an MOA, Military Operations Area. Again, I know I can fly through this without prior permission. I just have to exercise extreme caution. Now, why would a MOA be there when, you know, they're like, hey, you can fly through it and whatnot? It's there to separate military operations from IFR traffic. So it's keeping IFR, the military, and you safe by providing those services. Down here further, I do notice I have a restricted area. That is important. I do need prior permission to enter the area. There's probably some invisible hazards down here, so I'm definitely going to stay clear of this. And honestly, right now, I just don't want to deal with the restricted area. Now, we do have seaplane bases at this airport, Northeast Florida, our departure airport, and we also have a seaplane base down here. And so that could potentially, that's pretty much, I don't really classify it as airspace, but in reality, it could be, you know, the FAA doesn't say, hey, this is airspace, but in my opinion, it is. I count it as airspace because it's just something so different and something that a lot of people aren't used to. So we have those seaplane airspaces in there. Now, as we travel down south more, we get to Daytona Beach International. That's a Charlie. So with this Charlie, again, I need to remain vigilant because we're going to have an influx of traffic. We're going to have, we're going to need clearance to go through this. So if I cruise at 4,500, I'm okay. But I probably want to cruise at a lower altitude since we're at sea level pretty much this whole time. So I'll probably cruise, let's see, we're going east. East is least, so east is odd. So I'll probably cruise at 3,500. So I'm going to need clearance to go through this Charlie. I will probably contact them 15 miles to the north of the field. And I noticed that this delta only goes up to 1,500 feet. So that 1,500 feet, if I'm at 3,500, that'll keep me clear of Flagler Executive, but not the Charlie. So I'm probably going to pick up flight following if I can. I suppose we could go out this way, but again, we're looking at efficiency, which is something I'll talk about here in a second. Now, again, we have New Smyrna. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. I'm probably butchering that. But that only goes up to 1,199 feet. That's what that negative means. 1,199 feet. So we'll be below that. But we still have to be we'll be above it, sorry. We still have to be very careful of our descent here, because if we descend too low, we have to get clearance from New Smyrna. So that's something to definitely be aware of, and we'll figure out altitudes in part 2 of this when we actually look at weather, top of climb, and actual numbers and things like that. So, yeah, and then our destination airport, Macy Ranch Air Park, that is a, Golf at the surface, Echo at 700 feet. And something to also note that it's right inside the alert area. So that's kind of crazy there. So that's something to obviously be aware of. Down south we have another Charlie, Orlando Sanford International, and we have Orlando International's Bravo. So in case if we have to divert southbound, we have to be very, very careful of this Bravo, of this Charlie, that we don't bust it. So newer airspace out here, these indicate where Echo starts at a different altitude. So within this sector, Echo starts at 1,300 feet MSL versus, 1,200 is the standard. We have the contiguous US ADAs. Now, for whatever reason, if we have to go eastbound more, the ADAs is very important to keep an eye out for, because the ADAs is basically signifying, symbolic, I don't know. It's basically symbolic of saying, hey, you're crossing into international waters. So if I'm crossing this way, I'm crossing into international waters. If I'm crossing this way, I'm crossing into United States waters, so be very careful. And, but we don't plan on puncturing the US ADAs, so that's not really a top concern. I'm more concerned about the busy airspace down here than out here. We do have some warning areas off the coast here. Again, hazardous activities potentially could interfere with my aircraft. So we're going to stay in and probably track the coast down. Again, we have restricted areas over here and special space operations active by NOTAM. So if I ever have to divert southbound, we're going to expect that we have to check the NOTAMs and things like that. So that's pretty much it for airspace, it looks like. But just keeping in mind gliders, and again, traffic, terrain, clouds, and airspace. That's always how I start off with my cross-country flight planning. Now, the second little flow I use is legal, safe, efficient. Okay. So efficient is more so for commercial pilots, but getting into the mindset of a commercial pilot in private is awesome. That's something that everybody should be doing, and I truly believe it does help everybody become a better pilot in the long run. So we're going to talk about legal, okay? Now, this can encompass pretty much traffic, terrain, cloud, and airspace. That's what these three things also encompass, right? So, legal. Are we within limitations of our aircraft, of our pilot? Are we in limitations of the, your personal minimums? Are you comfortable? Are you complying with the FARs, with the regulations, with that power off gliding distance? Right, so the plan is to stay inbound more towards, like, following the coast down. Because if we follow the coast, I mean, we have so many landmarks over here. We have High Bridge, so I'm probably going to use High Bridge here. But it won't let me track on this one. I'll have to type in the flight plan later. But we have all of these checkpoints down here. And if we follow the coast down, it gives us pretty much a direct shot to our destination airport. Which is what we're doing legal? Absolutely. Now, as long as we don't bust this airspace, we're absolutely legal. And as long as we comply with our cloud clearances, we're legal. We have all of our documents, inspections, equipment, we're legal, right? Now, adding on to that, furthermore, safe. Now, the FAA wants it legal, right? But I want it safe. So, do I as a pilot feel comfortable flying in this airspace? That's what I first asked myself. And the answer is no. Because I've never flown there before, right? So that's kind of my strike one. However, because of the pre-flight briefings that we've done, I feel a lot more comfortable. So I'm actually okay with going into these airspaces. I have probably 50, 60 hours of controlled airport experience. I have probably, it's quite a bit, because I would do my cross countries and talk to center, air traffic control, and things like that. I've been in and out landed in several Bravos and Deltas, so I feel comfortable, okay? Now, the other thing is your personal minimums. Do you feel safe landing in the winds that are forecasted? Do you feel safe? Things like that. Now, same thing with the legal side. Legal is current. Currency. Do I have my 3 takeoffs, 3 landings within 90 days? My flight review. Is my flight review done? Or is it overdue? Things like that. Now, safety, we lean more towards, okay, personal minimums. Do I feel comfortable in this? I've only had 3 landings within 90 days. That's probably not a good idea, especially while taking passengers. So you look at things like that. And the visibility. Have I flown in 5 statute miles of visibility? Because that's a VFR. I have, but have you? Have you flown in 20 knot direct crosswind? So those are things that I ask myself. Yes, I have flown in a 20 knot direct crosswind. Do I feel comfortable? Yes. But, you know, the limitations of a private pilot should be significantly lower than a certified flight instructor. And that's completely normal. So I ask myself those questions like, okay, the winds are gusting 50. Do I feel comfortable going right now? No. And that's true. No. Winds are gusting 50. Do I feel comfortable in my Cirrus? I could probably do it, but, I mean, I've never actually done it. Now, if I had another pilot next to me that's an instructor that has Cirrus time, would I feel more comfortable? Maybe. We'll see. It just depends. Seeing, like, fatigue level, things like that, how many hours of sleep. Now, again, with legal, we go back to alcohol regulations, you know, and I'm safe. But to add on to it, we add the safety factor because the law isn't always the safest buffer. So you want to add your buffer. Make sure that you have that down. And efficient. Am I getting to point A? Am I getting from point A to point B efficiently, effectively? Am I using the least amount of fuel possible? Am I getting there the quickest? Am I, you know, I remember when I was a private pilot, I would always have what we call zigzag flight plans. So, like, for instance, like this, right? So, I would always have, like, a zigzag flight plan. Like, oh my goodness, I don't want to go through the Charlie. I don't want to do that. I just don't want to talk to them. I don't want to deal with it. In the long run, that burns more fuel, takes up more time. That's not efficient. Whereas, if I just leave it in a straight line like this, I mean, that's pretty dang efficient. That's pretty much direct to almost we're following the coast down. That's our plan. So, just try to see if you can make it efficient. Now, I understand some pilots may not be comfortable with flying through a Charlie, flying through a Bravo. Just see how efficient you can make your flight plan. But legal and safe are the number one or the number two priorities in the situation. And all of this goes back to traffic, terrains, clouds, airspace. So that was a long lesson, probably very boring. But just to recap, this is so very important that you look at the charts before you start doing anything. Something that I did not cover yet is runway length distances. I will probably make another video on that, talking about when we do the performance. We'll actually do that when we do the performance. So we'll look at runway distances, we'll look at takeoff distances, landing distances, accelerated stop distances. Yes, I do calculate an accelerated stop in a single engine plane, just for like improved safety buffer. And we'll also go through a more thorough weather briefing on the next part. So just to recap, so next part will be performance and weather, and probably we might get into some NOTAMs, and then the next part, so part 3 will be the actual numbers portion, so filling out a Navlog, and then part 4 will be the ICAO International Flight Plan portion, and then that will conclude cross-country flight planning. I may even throw in a part 5 where it's mainly scenario based, so like, what if this happens when you're flying? What if that happens when you're flying? Type of deal. But thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful to some degree, and I hope to see you on the next one.